Hey guys, tonight we wander back through flickering lamplight and marble alleys, past soldiers stomping in sandals and senators whispering in togas, to a time when your left hand, yes, that quiet little hand you probably use to scratch your nose or fumble a snack, was seen as something supernatural. You're about to walk the streets of ancient Rome, not just as any citizen, but as someone different, someone left-handed. And trust me, in this world, that means trouble. There are no ergonomic pens or ambidextrous scissors here. What you got instead is a mix of superstition, reverence, and fear. Oh, and a very real possibility that people might think you're a witch, a prophet, or worse, someone with a curse slithering under your skin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, comment where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Midnight in Milan, 2 a.m. in Toronto. Let's see who's still with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You were born in a small Roman village, let's say somewhere near the Tiber River. It's early morning, and your mother wraps you in linen, whispering a little prayer to the household gods. You're perfect, she thinks. Well, almost. As soon as you start to reach for things, she notices it. You grab with your left. She doesn't say anything right away, but others do. An older cousin tuts under her breath. Your grandfather crosses himself. Not the Christian kind, not yet, but a Roman version, muttering something about sinistra fortuna, leftward luck, which sounds nice, but it isn't. In Latin, sinistra means left. It also means evil, ominous, and unlucky. You can already guess how that combo went over in a society obsessed with signs and omens. Right was good, left was other. As you grow, you notice people watching you more closely. Not all of them unkindly. A traveling herbalist offers you a charm, just a pebble, worn smooth and inscribed with strange curves. He whispers that children like you see things differently. You've got the moon in your fingers, he says. You don't know what that means yet. In school, your tutor scolds you for holding your wax tablet wrong. Use your right. He barks. Like a Roman, you try, but it feels like drawing with your foot. One classmate smirks, then mutters the word male ficus under his breath. Sorcerer. You haven't even hit puberty, and you've already been accused of low-level wizardry. Yay! And still, something stirs in you. Maybe it's in the way shadows cling more tightly to your side of the atrium. Or the way animals seem to look at you just a second longer. Once, a raven flies low over your head, cawing, then disappears behind a roof. From the left, which brings us to the Romans and their birds. They believe that signs, auspices, came from watching the skies. Priests called augurs stood in sacred spaces and watched for birds. The direction they came from mattered more than what they looked like. If birds flew in from the right, it was considered favorable. From the left, sinister, literally. But here's the kicker. Sometimes the left was better. Why? Because Roman priests faced south during rituals, which flipped the directional logic. Suddenly, left became east, the land of dawn and new beginnings. Historians still argue whether this inconsistency meant Romans were confused or just like hedging their bets. Because really, what's more Roman than building an entire civilization around having it both ways? In private, your father starts training you in secret. He sees your sword grip. You're like that Thracian gladiator, he says. Unpredictable. He doesn't mean it unkindly. There's awe in his voice, too. The Thracians, especially left-handed ones, were legends in the arena, not because they followed the rules, but because they broke them with elegance and ferocity. At night, you sit by the hearth, playing with a knucklebone game. You always toss them with your left. You win. A lot. Enough for your little brother to pout and accuse you of cheating. But your grandmother smiles. She reaches into her sleeve and pulls out a thin bracelet. Bronze, etched with waves curling counterclockwise. This belonged to my mother, she says softly. Passed to me because I saw dreams backward. You stare. Backward dreams. She nods. Some of us dream from the left. That phrase stays with you. You'll hear it again in darker moments. sometimes whispered by candlelight, sometimes shouted by someone trying to condemn you, and sometimes printed in graffiti, barely legible, scratched into the walls of alleyways near the Forum. Sinistra vices est futurum. The left sees the future. Here's a fun quirk. In Roman theater, actors playing sinister characters often enter from stage left. Not subtle. Imagine watching an ancient play and the villain just glides in from your side, your hand, and everyone gasps. Not because of what he says, but because of where he came from. One night, you and your friends sneak into a procession. You mimic the augurs, trying to read birds. You see two sparrows dart left, then vanish. Your friend swears it's a bad sign. You grin and say, "Only if you're facing the wrong way." He laughs, for you both know there's weight in your joke. You feel it now, that pull, that little hum in your left palm, like static, like something just under the skin. Years later, people will ask if you always knew, if you felt different, if the world tilted a bit, whenever you reach for it with a hand not meant to lead. You'll smile, remembering the raven, the bracelet, the way even Rome, in all its cold logic and law, made space for mystery, especially the kind that came from the side nobody wanted to admit was powerful. And all you'll say is, "I dream from the left." You're older now, maybe 13. Your knees are scraped, your tunic always a little too short, and you've just been dragged by your uncle to witness a public ritual on the Capitoline Hill. This is no ordinary day. Today, the augurs, the elite priestly birdwatchers of Rome, are reading the sky again, and you, left-handed and curious, are watching them. They stand in solemn formation, white robes pressed, bronze rods in hand. The lituus, they call it, a curved staff used to mark the sacred sky into quadrants. They don't just wave around like a wand. Oh no, there's a system, an invisible grid drawn over the heavens, with east and west, north and south laid out like a board game only the gods understand. And here's where things get very Roman. As one of the augurs steps forward, he faces south, not north, not east, south, always south. This orientation flips everything. Left becomes east, right becomes west. Now remember, in Roman belief, east was the domain of light, new beginnings and divine favor. So when birds fly in from your left while you're facing south, that's good. Very good. Leftward flight equals divine yes. It's not just a charming superstition. It can change the fate of entire armies. Augurs were consulted before war, before elections, before major public works. If the birds disapproved, no one dare move forward. And if they came from the left at just the right moment, that meant Jupiter himself had given you a magical green light. So as you stand there, squinting at the flutter of wings overhead, you're struck by something strange. They need you, not you specifically. Though yes, you're obviously special, but the direction you represent, the left, that unpredictable quadrant, the one that might spell disaster or salvation, a magistrate beside you mutters under his breath. From the left, he says, "The gods whisper secrets." You look at him sideways. He's not being poetic, he's nervous, superstitious. The augur nods solemnly. The ritual proceeds. This practice, taking the auspices, wasn't just ancient drama. It had political weight. Entire elections were halted if a bird flew wrong. That's right, if a pigeon so much as fluttered its feathers from an awkward angle, Rome might say, "Sorry, no Senate today." Historians still argue whether augury was truly believed or simply a handy tool for manipulating events. Was it faith or politics dressed in feathers? There's no consensus. But if you ask the augurs, if you ask you, the kid standing on that marble hill, you know it feels real. That sense of magic thickens the deeper you go. Some augurs are born left-handed. A rare few, not that they'd admit it. Most are trained to use the right, even if it cramps their writing or twists their gestures. But in private, in quiet chambers, the real signs, they say, come from the left. The right hand may bless, but the left, it listens. Later that evening, as the light fades and you walk past temples casting long shadows, you pass a statue of Janus, the god of doorways, transitions, beginnings, and endings. Two faces back to back. One looking forward, one behind. You stare at it, wondering, which way does he favor? Which hand does he use to open time? You test a theory. You raise your left hand toward the statue. Just for a moment, you swear its eyes shift. Probably just the wind. Or maybe Janice knows something you don't. Now, let's peek into the life of an augur's apprentice. You'd expect grandeur, scrolls and secrets and gold leaf rituals. But a lot of it is standing still, for hours, watching the sky, waiting for birds. There are categories: Aves Elit's winged birds and Aves Oscines, singing birds. Owls, ravens, woodpeckers, each with its own symbolic baggage. Not exactly the Hogwarts owl experience. More like very intense bird watching with cosmic consequences. Sometimes birds don't show up at all. That's a sign too. And then, of course, there are false auguries. People faking signs. Releasing caged birds at the right moment. Whispering predictions that just happen to benefit their patrons. Oh, yes, Rome may be ancient, but humans have always known how to cheat a system. One of your neighbors, an older woman with a limp and silver-threaded braids, tells you that her grandfather was an augur. She says he once predicted a flood from the way a crow tilted its head. The gods speak through strange angles, she murmurs. Only crooked things know what's coming. You file that away. Crooked things. Crooked hands. Crooked paths. At the next public games, you overhear a bet hinge on augury. Two older men arguing over the chariot race. One insisting the birds at dawn flew in from the left. He says Mars is favoring the red team. The other scoffs, saying those were crows, not doves. Bad omen. Always has been. They slap coins into a palm and sit down. The race begins. A horse slips. Guess who wins? Even the common folk follow the sky's patterns. Housewives won't bake bread if a raven perches on the left side of the window. Sailors delay voyages for left-leaning omens. Children are named according to dreams had on their mother's left side. There's this belief, maybe a whisper passed from Etruscans to Romans, that dreams had while sleeping on your left side are closer to prophecy, closer to the underworld, not necessarily darker, but deeper, more tangled in fate. So you try it one night. You roll to your left and close your eyes. You dream of staircases that bend, of a road paved in obsidian, of your left hand holding a flame that doesn't burn, just glows. You wake up sweating but calm, like you walked through something secret and came out whole. And yes, okay, maybe it's just a dream. Maybe, but it's your dream, from your side, and in Rome. That means something, because here's the truth. The left isn't just direction. It's meaning. It's warning and wonder wrapped together. The side of things people pretend not to see, but always glance at when no one's watching. And as you walk home through a fog-drenched alley, still hearing crows overhead, you realize something powerful. Maybe being left-handed isn't a curse. Maybe it's the clearest sign the gods ever gave you. You wake with a strange clarity, still lying on your left side, your dream clinging like dew. Rome hums outside your window, vendors shouting, hooves clattering on stone, dogs barking like they own the city. But inside your head, that dream won't dissolve. The left hand holding fire. What does it mean? You decide to ask someone who might know. There's a scholar who lives near the Temple of Vesta. He's an odd one, skinny as a broomstick, eyes like olives soaking in brine. People call him the scribe with two brains, half mocking, half admiring. He writes in Greek and Latin, often at the same time. You've seen him flip a stylus from one hand to the other mid-sentence. Ambidextrous, they whisper, or possessed. You corner him in a garden, where he's scribbling notes onto a wax tablet. Do dreams from the left mean anything? You ask. He barely looks up. Everything means something in Rome, he says, especially the things no one agrees on. Then he grins. Come back after dark. That night, in the flicker of a single oil lamp, he tells you a secret. Sinistra, he whispers, doesn't just mean left. It comes from an older root, possibly Etruscan, possibly even Sabine. Words back then didn't just describe things, they shaped them. He walks to a high shelf and pulls out a worn scroll, edges frayed like torn parchment wings. Read this, he says, unfurling it slowly. A prayer to Bellona, goddess of war and frenzy. See the markings? You do. They tilt left. The letters lean, like they're slipping backward into time. The scribe traces a line with his finger, written by a left-hand scribe. Look how the spell curves counter to the sun. Backward. That's power. In Roman law, you learn. There are words with legal weight, and others with magical weight. And sometimes they're the same. Like Dexter, right, meaning favorable, skillful, law-abiding. While sinister, well, you know by now, and it gets weirder. In certain documents, if you sign your name with your left hand, the agreement can be considered invalid, unless it's a death oath. Yes, you heard right. Some soldiers are known to sign last will testaments with the left, believing it binds their fate tighter. Blood and ink from the same cursed source. You walk home slowly that night, your left hand tingling. The scribe's words echo. Left doesn't just mean bad. It means unusual, dangerous, sacred. Your grandmother agrees. She tells you a story as she stirs barley into a pot. When I was a girl, she says, a left-handed midwife delivered my cousin. No pain, not a drop of blood. They said she sang backward lullabies to trick the fates. She leans in close, but no one would marry her. Too dangerous. That's the dance of Rome. Fear and fascination, always circling each other like gladiators in the dust. Even in court, things lean toward the right. The prosecuting speaker stands on the judge's right, the defendant on the left. Accusation versus defense, logic versus suspicion. It's subtle, but it seeps into the architecture of justice itself. And then there's language. You start noticing it everywhere. The word Dexter becomes dexterity, a good thing, nimbleness, intelligence. And when someone dies tragically, the Romans might say they were taken by a sinistra fortuna, a left-leaning fate. So here you are, just a Roman teen with a slightly weird handwriting and dreams that feel more real than breakfast, and your entire language is telling you you're unlucky. And yet at the same time, the augurs lean into leftward birds, the scholars treasure leftward spells, and some of the oldest myths whisper of left-handed heroes, like the legend of Mucius Scaevola. Yes, Scaevola literally lefty. The story goes that he was a Roman soldier who snuck into an enemy camp to assassinate a king. He was caught. As punishment, he was forced to burn his right hand in a fire. He didn't scream. He didn't flinch. Just stared into the flames until the flesh bubbled and blackened. Impressed, the enemy king released him. Scaevola returned home a legend, with only his left hand. That's how he got the name. Now, historians still argue whether Scaevola even existed, or if he was just patriotic fanfiction for Rome's war machine. Either way, the story stuck. The image of a man becoming a hero because he lost his right hand and kept going with the left is powerful. It makes you think. Maybe the left isn't just feared. Maybe it's what's left when everything else is gone. Later, at the bathhouse, a friend teases you for using your left to ladle water. You're going to summon Neptune, he jokes. Or maybe Poseidon will curse your tub. You smirk and do it anyway. The water swirls counterclockwise. You pretend not to notice, but you do. You start to test things. Writing with your left. Pouring wine from the left. Taking left-hand paths in the market instead of right. Not always, but when no one's looking. Just to see. And sometimes weird stuff happens. A coin lands upright. A dog stops barking. A stranger nods at you like he knows. Nothing huge. Just echoes. But in a city like Rome, where signs are everywhere and silence often means more than words, you start to wonder. You ask the scribe if left-handedness could be divine. He raises an eyebrow. Divine? No. Dangerous? Always. Then softer. But sometimes the gods choose danger over boredom. So you keep walking with your hand half hidden in your tunic, wondering how many others in the city share this strange tilt. How many dream left, write left, fight left, and never speak of it. One afternoon, you pass a group of school children chanting lessons. One line catches your ear. Dexter Dei, manus fortis est. The right hand of God. It is strong. You wait for a second line. Nothing comes. So you whisper one to yourself. Sinistra Dei, Oculus Secus Est. The left hand of God, the eye that sees the unseen. The words give you goosebumps. You're not cursed. You're tuned differently. You walk with shadows. You write with silence. And Rome, for all its pomp and marble, needs both sides of the sky to survive. You're older now, maybe 15 or 16, just old enough to get caught up in the mess of politics, gods, and glory that Rome never seems to run out of. You're still left-handed. Of course, that hasn't changed. But your world has gotten bigger, louder, more dangerous. And tonight, you find yourself standing outside a palatial home near the Palatine Hill, watching servants hustle and torches flicker, because inside, somewhere past all that marble and silk, is a man who might just change everything. An emperor. You've heard the whispers. Some say he writes with his left. Others say he gestures with it during public ceremonies, casually defying centuries of Roman decorum. Others just call him touched. Not by madness, necessarily, but by fate. Something divine. The thing is, Roman history has a few of these figures. Powerful men whose left-handedness wasn't hidden but highlighted. Sometimes by their enemies. Sometimes by the people who adored them. But always with that same blend of suspicion and fascination. Take Tiberius, for instance. Not the cheeriest of emperors. Actually, a lot of Romans thought he was a bit off, cold, paranoid. But there were rumors, nothing you'd see in an official document, of course, that he favored his left hand for certain military gestures, that he issued commands with it during key battles in Germania. Not out of strategy, they said, but instinct, like he trusted his left more than the right. Then there's Caligula. Oh, yes, that guy. Now, he was a mess in every possible direction, but even he had his moments of eerie precision. Some accounts claim he performed a few key rituals backward, left hand leading, to confuse the gods. Did it work? Well, considering how he ended up, maybe not. And of course, Julius Caesar. The name alone crackles with drama. There's long been speculation that Caesar, in his private writings, may have been left-handed, or at least trained himself to be ambidextrous. Why does that matter? Because Caesar's power wasn't just in his sword or speech. It was in how he controlled perception. Being left-handed might have been a secret edge, a way to disrupt his enemies, to unsettle allies, to always keep people guessing. Historians still argue whether Caesar's supposed left-handedness was real or propaganda. Maybe it was a convenient rumor. Maybe it was political spin. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a quiet truth too strange for marble inscriptions. Because remember, in Rome, to be left-handed was to be other, which, for a politician, could be dangerous, but also useful. You start noticing how powerful men use their bodies when they speak. The raised right hand is common, expected, but the occasional flick of the left? That's when people lean in, when crowds murmur, when something unsettling crackles in the air. You think about your own gestures. The way your left hand sometimes drifts upward when you're not paying attention. The way it seems to move before your thoughts. Like it knows. Your mother tells you of a general named Corvinus who kept a small dagger strapped to his left forearm. Not for battle. For decision-making. He said it reminded him that all choices cut. She says, even the quiet ones. You start to keep a charm on your own left wrist. A tiny bronze disc with a carved eye and 3 dots. Supposed to represent the unseen fates. No one asks what it means. That's part of the charm. In the forum, you overhear a senator mocking a political rival. He thinks like a lefty. The man scoffs. Always walking backward into the future. You smirk. Not the insult he thinks it is. You've learned to read between the lines. Left-handedness shows up in graffiti more than you'd expect. Scribbled along aqueducts, carved into temple walls. Sometimes it's crude, drawings of left hands with eyes in the palm. Sometimes it's poetic. One near the Subura reads, in Sinistra, Veritas. In the left, Truth. One night, in a wine-soaked tavern, a retired soldier tells a wild story. Says he served under a centurion who always saluted with his left. Said the right was for Rome, the left was for the gods. The soldier shrugs. Man died in battle with a smile on his face. What does that tell you? Another fringe detail. Some foreign dignitaries brought gifts meant to be accepted only with the left hand, a practice borrowed from eastern regions, Persia, maybe, or even older cultures further east. The Romans were skeptical, of course, but some emperors played along. You can imagine the scene, an emperor smirking slightly, reaching out with the wrong hand to take something ancient and cursed, or blessed, depending on your mood. You start practicing your own version of this, reaching for odd things with your left, making small, intentional movements, not because anyone's watching, but because you are. And one day, while delivering scrolls to a minor official, you meet a man with ink stains all up his left forearm. He's quiet, thin, wears no ring. As you pass the scroll, he murmurs, "You right, left?" You nod, cautious. He smiles. Then you already know. He disappears into the building before you can ask what he means. You spend the next week trying to find him again. No luck, but you start noticing others. Left-handers. Not many, just a few. One flips fish on the docks with stunning precision. Another plays a lyre with reverse technique. A young girl draws spirals on the ground with her toe, always counterclockwise. There's no society, no secret club, just a feeling. A web you're part of without ever joining. The left-hand network. Hidden in plain sight, echoing beneath the marble grandeur Rome. And that's when it hits you, all this fear of left-handedness. It's not about curses or omens. It's about control. Rome thrives on order, categories, direction. Right is law. Left is doubt. Right is clarity. Left is mystery. But the mystery, that's where the magic lives. You realize that maybe, just maybe, every time an emperor flicked his left wrist, or a general tightened his left fist, or a scribe wrote a backwards prayer, they were all doing the same thing, cracking the mask of the world, just for a second, letting the strange truth through. You're sweating through your tunic in the dirt of a training yard now, pressed between a line of other boys holding dull wooden swords. The air is thick with grit and muscle. Welcome to the Ludus, a gladiator training school. And it's not a place known for mercy, especially not toward lefties. Right hand forward, bellows a lanista, your trainer, a barrel-chested man with scars older than your oldest uncle. You try. You really do. But the blade feels wrong in your right. Too heavy, too slow. The grip squeaks, your knuckles ache. And when you swing, it's all elbows and embarrassment. The boy next to you smirks. His name is Flavius, and he's exactly the kind of Roman this place loves. Strong, obedient, right-handed, predictable. He swings. Clean. The trainer nods. You swing. Crooked. The trainer growls. Use your proper hand, he snaps. You glance at your left. It tingles like it knows it's been insulted. Later, alone, you sneak behind the stables and practice in secret. Left hand gripping the gladius. Footwork reversed. At first it's chaos, like trying to walk backward uphill. But then something clicks. Your swings become smoother. You don't feel clumsy anymore. You feel dangerous. And here's the secret. Left-handed fighters are rare. Really rare. Maybe 1 in 10. And in the arena, that rarity becomes an advantage. Roman combat is built on symmetry. Shields in the left hand. Sword in the right. That's how the formations work. Everyone in a line. Everyone covering the person beside them. A left-handed fighter throws off that rhythm like a drop drumbeat in a military march. Historical records mention it. Sparingly, but they do. Gladiators like Erasmus the Red, who was notorious not for his height or strength, but because he fought in reverse. Spectators would gasp when he entered, not because he was massive or bloodthirsty, but because he held his blade in the wrong hand. Some crowds saw it as an exotic flair. Others thought it was cursed. Either way, it drew attention and bets. Historians still argue whether these reverse fighters were trained that way on purpose or if they slipped through cracks of a right-handed system. But whatever the reason, they confused their opponents. Standard training didn't prepare you for a fighter who mirrored your every move. And by the time you realize what was happening, your ribs were already bleeding into the sand. So you lean into the trick. You train left, in secret. You learn to pivot the opposite way. Feint from angles others ignore. You master the art of disruption. The first time the trainer lets you spar in public, you switch your sword to your left at the last second. Gasps. A few chuckles. One boy sneers. Show us your which hand, then Flavius says, grinning. You don't grin back. You strike. Fast. Not elegant, but fast. And weird, your movements curl like smoke instead of slicing like lines. Flavius stumbles. His shield is out of position. Your blade kisses his ribs. Lightly, but enough to win. The yard falls silent. The trainer crosses his arms. Fine, use your curse hand. But don't blame me if he gets skewered. After that, no one mocks you. Much. There's a story you hear from a traveling Retiarius, one of those Nedon Trident fighters. He swears he once fought a secutor who switched hands mid-match. Caught him completely off guard. Felt like I was fighting my own reflection, he mutters. Then takes a long drink. Never saw the blow coming. You think about that. Fighting a reflection. The Roman world is obsessed with symmetry. Statues, architecture, law. All designed to reflect balance and perfection. But the left-handers? You're the cracks in the mirror. And cracks let light through. Your training progresses. Some days, you're forced to use your right. It's miserable. But on others, when no one's paying too much attention, you flip the sword. Just for a few moves. And those are the days you feel unstoppable. A retired Murmillo visits the school once. He's missing 2 fingers on his right hand. You watch him demonstrate moves using his left. Every trainee watches in confusion. But you understand. Afterward, you catch him alone, cleaning his battered helmet. You always fight with the left now? You ask. He shrugs. After I lost these, he holds up his right hand, I had no choice. And before, he smirks. Before, I used to sneak in a few left hooks. Trainers hated it. Fans loved it. I figured out quick, if they think you're wrong, and you win anyway, you become a legend. You remember those words. Wrong and winning. That's how you feel sometimes. Like the world keeps telling you what's proper, what's Roman, and you keep cutting against it. Not to rebel. Just because that's the hand you were given. Your reputation grows. Slowly. Quietly. Other fighters start watching you more closely. Some avoid sparring. Others try to copy your movements. But they can't quite mirror them. They're mimicking a language they don't speak. Even the trainer grudgingly admits you're not a total embarrassment anymore. One night, by the campfire, a boy from Carthage tells you of his uncle, a left-handed charioteer who refused to hold the reins in the traditional style. Said he trusted his horse's heart more than the whip. He won 6 races before someone sabotaged his cart. The Romans called him left-cursed. Or left-blessed, you say. The boy shrugs. Depends on who's betting. That's the truth of it. In the arena, the left isn't good or bad. It's unreadable. And that's terrifying to people who rely on patterns. You sleep with your sword by your left side now. Always. Your dreams have shifted too. Less fire, more water. Spirals. The feeling of moving through the world backward, but arriving first. You don't know what fate has planned. Rome is a wheel grinding forward. But maybe, just maybe, your left hand holds a spoke that can steer it. It starts with a whisper. You're at the edge of a crowded market. One eye on the fishmonger, the other on the smoke curling above a temple nearby. A woman in a hood brushes past you. Left palm uncovered, she mutters under her breath. Tonight, by the fountain. You blink. What? But when you turn, she's gone, slipped into the crowd like vapor. You're not exactly sure why you listen, but you do. Maybe because the market felt staged a day, like the day was building to something stranger than barley and olives. So that night you go, it's late, nearly midnight. The stars hang low and stubborn, and the fountain near the temple of Diana burbles softly under a silver moon. You wait, then you see them. Not witches exactly. Not in the storybook sense. No bubbling cauldrons or cackling crones. Just 3 figures, wrapped in plain robes, seated in a triangle around the fountain's rim. They move slowly, methodically. One sprinkles what looks like fennel seeds into the water. Another traces a spiral on the stone with a bone, maybe a bird's. The third, she beckons. You approach, and she holds out her hand. Without thinking, you mirror the gesture. Left palm up. Open. She smiles. Southpaw, she says softly. They never see us coming. Turns out in Rome, the connection between left-handedness and magic isn't just symbolic. It's systemic. The left palm, especially when exposed during certain moon phases, is believed to absorb energy, not project it. Absorb it, like a sponge for the unseen. You listen as they speak in slow, curling words. One talks about reversing the flow. Another murmurs about shadow-casting rituals and left-handed writing that doesn't just convey spells. It creates them. Not unlike programming, but, with fewer error messages and more sacrifice figs. The city is full of these hidden rituals, they say. Little moments. Left-handed blessings before childbirth. Leftward hair braiding to ward off jealousy. Sprinkling salt with the left hand to confuse angry spirits. You begin to notice the subtle things, like how certain women at wells stir the water counterclockwise, or how some market stalls arrange their wares in spirals, starting from the left. No signs, no symbols, but there's a pattern. Historians still argue whether these rituals were religious, magical, or just deeply held habits passed from older cultures like the Etruscans. Those people, by the way, were very into divination. They even had priests who read entrails yum by turning the liver in specific directions. Left for the dead, right for the gods. You start carrying a charm of your own. A tiny pouch of herbs, rue, wormwood, a few threads from your mother's old tunic, tucked into your belt. You don't tell anyone. But on days when the sky feels heavy and the birds fall silent, you press it with your left hand and feel a ripple under your skin. One evening, as you watch a funeral procession from a rooftop, you notice something odd. The mourners walk around the pyre to the left, counterclockwise, 3 times. You ask a passerby why. To confuse the dead, he says flatly, so they don't follow us home. Creepy? Sure, but smart. Later, you ask your grandmother if she ever heard of such things. She laughs softly. Oh, darling, she says, brushing her hair back. In my village, we weren't allowed to sweep the floor leftward, said with brush-away blessings. The more you dig, the more the left hand becomes not just a limb, but a lens, a way of seeing the world reversed, sideways, shadow first. It's not about evil. It's about edges, that narrow gap between what's real and what isn't. And the left slips through. You meet a man from Thessaly at the docks. He sells odd oils and cracked amulets. He sees the way you hold your satchel and asks, "Born sinister?" You nod cautiously. He leans in. "There's an old belief," he whispers, "that the left hand of a seventh son can pull truth from lies, just by touch. Does it work?" He shrugs. "Worked on me." He presses a coin into your palm. "Flip it with your left tonight. If it lands on edge, run." You don't flip it. Not yet. But the idea burns in your head. At the baths, someone tells you that left-handed people can see ghosts. Not clearly, more like through fog. Blurs. Shapes moving in the wrong direction. You chuckle. Sounds like wine talk. Until one night, you do see something. A woman, standing at a corner, watching you with eyes like broken glass. You blink and she's gone. No one else saw her. Of course. From then on, you start carrying a bit of obsidian in your left sleeve. Supposed to repel restless spirits. You figure it can't hurt. But even the gods, it seems, have opinions on your strange orientation. At the Temple of Mercury, you offer a coin. The priest hesitates. "Right hand, please," he says politely. You stare at the coin, already resting in your left. He clears his throat. Reluctantly, you switch. But the moment you drop in the bowl, you feel off, like the balance is wrong. That night, you dream of stairs again, but they spiral the other way. Back at the fountain, the 3 women tell you that the gods aren't one mind, Jupiter hates left-hand offerings. Bellona demands them. Apollo prefers the right. Diana, ever the rebel, accepts both, depending on the moon phase. Rome is a city of contradictions. And the divine world is no different. One woman presses a folded cloth into your hand. Inside is a small mark, drawn in ash and wine, of a curled snake eating its tail, but bent leftward. Wear this during storms, she says. Lightning listens. Sure enough, during the next thunderstorm, you wrap the cloth around your wrist. Just once, lightning cracks in a weird rhythm, like a drumbeat echoing from somewhere you can't quite name. You're not sure what to believe anymore. But belief doesn't always ask permission. You remember that coin from the Thessalian man. One night, on a dare from yourself, you flip it with your left hand. It spins high, flashing silver in shadow, and lands flat. Heads. You wait. Nothing happens. But later, when you look in the mirror, your reflection smiles a half-second too late. Maybe it's nothing. Or maybe your left hand just pulled true from the air, quiet and sharp. And Rome, that great beast of marble and myth, shivers just slightly. You're in the forum when you first hear it. Two old merchants grumbling over figs and gossip. One of them spits into the dust and mutters. Caesar used his left hand when he cursed the Senate. No wonder things fell apart. You freeze. Wait, what? You've heard a lot of nonsense in Rome. Half the city runs on rumors, the other half on fermented fish sauce. But this one sticks. Julius Caesar. The name itself has weight, like a hammer behind the eyes. The man wasn't just a general or a politician. He was a storm in a toga, a comet that collided with a republic and left behind an empire. And now, someone saying he was left-handed? Well, maybe. You ask around. Carefully. One librarian claims that Caesar used both hands equally in battle, a sign of tactical genius, not witchcraft. Another scoffs and says the idea of left-handed leadership was slander started by rivals trying to brand him as unnatural, twisted, ominous. That word again, sinister. Historians still argue whether Caesar was naturally left-handed, trained to be ambidextrous, or whether the entire idea is just a smear campaign that stuck because, well, it sounds true. The kind of detail that fits a man like him. Dangerous, unpredictable, divine, and slightly cursed. You remember reading that Caesar once had a seizure in the Senate. Some call it epilepsy. Others claim it was possession. But there's a fringe theory that always makes the rounds in more shadowy corners of Rome. That Caesar didn't have fits. He had visions. And that his left hand would twitch before they came. A sort of divine antenna. Of course, no one's writing that down on a bronze tablet. The public face of Caesar was all discipline and power. But the private man? The one who crossed the Rubicon, who read the stars, who stared down omens and dared them to blink. That man might have walked the left-hand path. There's a curious story from his early campaigns in Gaul. During one battle, he was said to have drawn his gladius with his left. Just once. Just long enough to confuse the enemy, carve to the front line, and turn the tide. Some say it was necessity, his right arm wounded. Others insist it was strategy, or instinct, or maybe the gods whispering through muscle. A soldier's tale, sure. But in Rome, tales build temples. You begin to collect these fragments like coins, left-handed rumors, uneasy details, a mosaic of a man whose myth might just have a crooked edge. One scroll from a senator's private collection claims that Caesar often favored his left side when addressing people, turning just slightly that way during public speeches. Subtle, but intentional. A signal, a tick, or a challenge to tradition. You test it yourself in a crowded square. Climb up on a low wall, turn slightly left and speak. Your voice seems to move differently, like it pulls more than pushes. One day, while helping copy legal texts, you come across a curious line buried in a footnote on divination. The augurs warned him not to proceed. Birds flew from the left, but Caesar did not heed. Normally, that would be a bad omen. A big red stop sign from the gods. But Caesar? He marched forward anyway. And won. The message is clear. Maybe the left doesn't always mean doom. Maybe it means defiance. Maybe it's for those who don't ask for permission. You start seeing Caesar everywhere after that. Statues, coins, his face stamped into bones of city. And you notice something. Most depictions show him with his right hand raised. The correct hand. The safe hand. But once, just once, you find a worn statue in a crumbling villa, half covered in ivy, where his left hand holds a scroll. Not aggressively. Almost protectively. You wonder what's written on it. You visit a retired historian in Trastevere who claims his grandfather once met Caesar. Did he use his left? You ask. The man squints. He used whatever one. And that, he says, was the most Roman thing about him. You leave the house feeling lighter, like someone just handed you a sword carved from fog. Not long after, you attend a public reenactment of Caesar's assassination. Actors in white and red, voices raised, knives rubber but convincing. One detail catches your eye. When Caesar falls, he clutches his chest with his left hand. Everyone watches. Everyone gasps. But you're the only one who sees that twitch of a hand as he dies. A silent echo of a man who, even in death, leaned toward the unexpected. Later, a friend tells you it's just theatrical staging. You smile. Or is it, you sit beneath a fig tree and think about legacy. Not marble statues or speeches, but presence. The things people remember not because they were told to, but because they felt different. Left-handedness, you realize, isn't just anatomy. In Rome, it's a vibe, a reputation, an accusation, a compliment, if whispered the right way. And Julius Caesar, whatever hand he used to write his destiny, left behind a city where left still means something more than just not right. You trace your finger through the dust and draw a spiral, counterclockwise. Of course. Then you raise your left hand toward the sky. Just for a moment, birds scatter. And you wonder if somewhere out there, Caesar's watching. And if he ever did the same, you wake to the sound of chanting. Not angry shouting or the usual street hawkers, but something slow and deep, like stone grinding on stone. You slip outside and follow the sound up the hill toward the temples, your sandals kicking up little clouds of dust. By the time you reach the marble steps of the Temple of Janus, the chanting has faded, but something clings to the air, heavy and sharp, like iron. You come looking for answers, not from a scroll or a scribe this time, but from the gods themselves. Rome has many, more than you can count. Gods are doors and thresholds. Gods are crossroads and childbirth. Gods are war, wine, wisdom, grain, even mildew. Yes, there's an actual mildew god, and no, he doesn't get many parties. But today you're not looking for mildew. Today, you're chasing down a stranger question. Which gods favor the left? Turns out, some did. You walk through the temple district, watching how the priests perform their rites. Most use the right hand for offerings, bread, wine, the occasional terrified chicken. But not all. At the Temple of Vesta, you glimpse a Vestal virgin dropping a handful of salt with her left hand. Deliberate, unflinching. It hits the flame and pops. She doesn't flinch. Neither do the others. You ask a street philosopher about it. He snorts. Some goddesses, he says, prefer the honest hand, not the clean one. He means the left. You start making a list. Bellona, the war goddess, is a standout. Her rituals often involve blood. No surprise there. But it's said her fiercest priests would anoint their left arms in sacrificial ash before battle. Not the right. The left, to channel frenzy, rage, precision. Then there's Diana, goddess of the moon, the hunt, wild places, and unmarried independence. People say she walks counter to the sun, favoring the shadows. Some of her most ancient statues show her bow drawn in the left hand. Others show her with twin torches, one in each hand, but the left always burns darker. You start seeing her symbols, moons curling leftward, animals with their heads tilted slightly that way, arrows notched on the wrong side. Her temples are often circular, too, with inner sanctuaries that must be circled to the left before entering. You try it once, slipping into a quiet grove shrine, pacing the stone floor counterclockwise. And suddenly, you feel it, like a breeze that doesn't touch your skin, but brushes your thoughts. That night, you dream of a deer running backward to the woods, moonlight dripping from its antlers like silver sap. It stops only once, to look at you, and you swear its eyes are yours. You wake with a new name in your mouth. Trivia, not a game, not a joke, a goddess. She's another one who walks the margins. Goddess of crossroads, choices, and the spaces between. Some say she's a face of Hecate. Others call her something older, more local, less polished. Her statues are rare, but her signs are everywhere. 3 paths meeting, 3 candles placed unevenly, a bundle of twig bent leftward and tied with red thread. You find one of those bundles near the Aventine Hill, tucked behind a statue of Ceres. It vibrates in your hand, almost imperceptibly, like a string pulled tight. You don't take it. You leave it alone. Not all gods appreciate curiosity, but not all are cruel either. You meet an old temple cleaner who tells you the story of a minor household deity, Lars Sinistrus. Not evil, she says quickly, just unusual. He's the spirit of the crooked shelf, the misplaced coin, the left-handed child. We lead him offerings when something goes missing. You laugh, but only a little, because somehow that makes more sense than most theology. You start tracking temple rituals. Most gods demand offerings with the right hand. Jupiter, of course. King of order and thunderbolts. Mars, too. Sun gods especially. But the exceptions? They're more interesting. Some minor cults insist on mixed gestures. Right for life, left for death. Right for promises, left for secrets. One twilight rite you attend, uninvited, features a priestess drawing a circle around herself with her left hand while holding a candle in her right. The result is dazzling. The light dances oddly, flickering in slow motion, like time is bending inwards. No one notices you watching. Or maybe they do. One priest locks eyes with you and holds up his left hand, fingers bent in a spiral. You copy the motion. He nods once, then turns away. You can't tell if you've been invited or warned. Some scholars think Rome adopted this double-handed view from the Etruscans, who believed the sky was divided into 16 sections. Each quadrant had rules. And the left, the upper eastern quadrant, was sacred, divine, powerful, a zone of revelation. So perhaps left wasn't bad. It was just direct, too real, too raw. The gods don't always speak in ways you want to hear. And then there's the way people pray. You see an old man in the forum quietly lighting a candle. Right hand, of course. But when he closes his eyes, his left hand rests over his heart. You notice others do it too. Not always, but sometimes. Like their bodies remember something the law forgot. In the margins of the damaged prayer book, you find a scrawled note. The gods turn left when we forget to. You don't know what that means, but it feels true. You begin incorporating your left hand into your own quiet moments, lighting a flame, pouring a drop of oil, touching the cool stone of a temple wall with your fingertips. No thunder cracks, no birds fall from the sky. But once, just once, you hear your name whispered when no one's there. You look down, and your left hand is warm. It's market day in Sabura, and you're weaving through a tangle of shouting vendors and squawking chickens when you spot something strange. A man in a deep red cloak muttering to a small, battered coin before tossing in the fountain. Not into it, around it. He flicks it leftward, counterclockwise, 3 times. You stop, pretend to be interested in plums, and watch. He walks away without looking back. You've seen a lot of weird things in Rome. Ghost prayers, bleeding statues, children pretending to be augurs using pigeons. But this little spiral spell? That's new. Or maybe it's old. Very, very old. You start digging, asking questions, eavesdropping in herb stalls and hovering near scribes. And slowly, you begin to piece it together. The left hand, it turns out, is deeply entwined with Rome's darker rituals. Not just curses, but bindings, divinations, protections. All things that move outside the bright halls of temples and into the flickering shadows of alleyways and whispered prayers. Spell tablets, defictions, are your first big clue. If you've never seen one, imagine this. A thin sheet of lead etched with tight, looping curses. Words like daggers. Sometimes they're folded, nailed shut, or pierced with iron spikes. And many are designed explicitly to be activated by the left hand. Why? Because the left is the hand of inversion, of reversal, of flipping fate. One ancient tablet, unearthed from a well in Ostia, includes the phrase, "I write this with my left, that the gods may listen in silence." Not scream, not thunder, just listen. Historians still argue whether that silence was a blessing or a punishment. You find a seller of such tablets in the seedier part of the Aventine, a hunch man with an odd smile. He lets you hold one, just briefly. It hums, low and mean. The inscription coils leftward, like ivy around a throat. "Always rim with the left," he says. "The gods only hear you if you speak backwards." You buy a plain one, unmarked, just to see. But you don't write on it. Not yet. Instead, you start watching how people use their left hand when they think no one's looking. A woman curses under her breath at a debtor, brushing her left fingers over her wine cup. A boy draws circles in the dust with his left toe. A priest at a minor shrine to Ceres traces a symbol in flour, left to right, then stops, reverses it. These aren't accidents. They're formulas. Then you start noticing coins. Roman coins were more than money. They were propaganda, control. One side, almost always right, displayed emperors' gods' glory. The recto, the clean story. But flip them. The verso, the backside, is often stranger. Odd deities, serpents, unusual animals, symbols with leftward curves. One coin you find shows a hand, open and reaching left with an olive branch. No one remembers what it means. You meet a scholar who believes left-facing coin profiles are deliberate signs of dual power. To look left, he tells you, is to look inward. Another thinks left-facing gods are warnings, an encoded message. This one does not follow the rules. And let's not forget the spiral. Romans didn't invent it, but they used it in strange ways, on shields, pottery, wall carvings, often curling leftward. Not clockwise, like the sun's daily arc, no. The other way, the dream way, the shadow turn. You find a cup cracked but still whole, with a triple spiral carved inside. Not for decoration. It was hidden underneath the glaze, meant only for the drinker to discover, maybe to bless, maybe to hex. You drink from it anyway. It tastes like stone in time. You don't tell anyone. That night, your dreams loop, not in scenes, but shapes. A spiral staircase. A snake with no head or tail. A string of words you can't read, until you reach out in the dream with your left hand and touch them. And suddenly you understand, not just the words, but why they had to be written that way. You wake up with your hand clenched. There's a mark in your palm. Not a burn, not a wound. Just pressure, like you held something you weren't meant to keep. You open your satchel and take out the blank spell tablet. You don't write a curse. You write a question with your left hand. What is hiding behind the right? You fold it, hide it beneath a loose stone in your family's courtyard. No lightning, but a bird lands on the roof. Just one, a raven. It looks at you, cocks its head, flies off to the left. Of course, there are rituals you try after that. Not full spells, just gestures. Pouring wine leftward. Tying a string around your left wrist. Sleeping with your head facing north and your left hand under the pillow. Nothing happens at first, but then little things shift. A debt is suddenly forgiven with no reason. A person who wronged you trips in the street. A game you bet on ends exactly the way you guessed. Are you cursed, or are you simply lying? You tell no one, except the coin. You carry it in your pocket, flipping it when no one's looking, always with your left hand. Once it lands on edge again. Just once. A dog barks in the distance. A bell rings where no bell should be. You close your fingers around the coin and walk on. Rome may be built on columns and law, but beneath that, the cracks are full spirals. Left hand turns. Hidden wishes. Curses dress as prayers. And you started walking that spiral. Softly, carefully, leftward. It's early morning, and you're crouched at the edge of the triclinium, the Roman dining room. pretending to sweet, but mostly just spying. A patrician family is finishing their breakfast, lounging on couches, their slaves darting between them like anxious shadows. You watch them pass food, pour water wine, offer sweetened olives, and all of it happens with the right hand. Always the right, except for the little girl. Maybe 6, she tries to reach for a grape with her left hand, and her mother, without even looking, smacks it gently. "No," she says, all silken command. "That hand is for wiping." You wince, not because of the slap, but because you've heard this before. The Romans didn't just distrust the left hand. They made it part of your training. From childhood, daily life was a full-blown right-hand choreography. You know this better than anyone. You remember being small, sitting at a low table, try to write your name on a wax tablet with your left hand. The tutor's ruler came down like thunder. You'll never get a job in a forum like that. You didn't even want a job in the forum. Still, the message stuck. The left hand is improper, vulgar, wrong. Rome is a place of rules, and those rules dig deep. Even in private homes, the right is preferred. Eating, greeting, gesturing, gifting. If you pass someone a cup with your left hand, they'll hesitate before taking it, like you just offered them a live lizard. But you've also noticed something else. Despite the social pressure, despite the lectures, despite the bruised knuckles and rolled eyes, left-handed people don't stop. They just get better at hiding. You've seen them. The baker's son, who flips the dough with his left when no one's watching. The grumpy old sailor, who ties knots faster with his left and most with both hands. The mosaic artist who draws her patterns in leftward spirals, pretending it's just her style. You're not alone. Still, being left-handed in daily Roman life is a full-time act. You have to perform normal. Take the public baths. For instance, you're taught to scrub with your right, reach with your right, even wrap your toga over your left shoulder, so your right hand stays free. The message is clear. Your right hand is for society. Your left hand, that's for shadows, dirt, shame. Even dinner parties, the most casual seeming of gatherings, have rules. Food is placed so it's easiest to grab with your right. Guests are seated with that in mind. And if you toast someone with your left, God's help you. You'll be the gossip topic until Saturnalia. You hear one particularly pompous Senator mock a colleague. He gestured with his left hand during a funeral. Might as well have spat on the corpse. You roll your eyes, because even in mourning, Romans want you to mourn properly. But like all things in Rome, the deeper you go, the weirder it gets. In some rural households, especially those with older Etruscan roots, the rules flip. You visit a farm once in the Sabine Hills when Matrona insists guests enter with the left foot first. She says it confuses evil spirits. Her grandmother taught her. In another home, a boy who writes left-handed is not punished but praised. He dreams in reverse, his father says with pride. So the rule isn't always the same. The law says one thing, but the land remembers something else. You come across an odd little superstition in a street performance. The juggler starts his routine by tossing his first ball with his left hand. A quiet nod to Fortuna, goddess of fate. He catches your eye and winks. Later, he tells you, right hand to keep order, left hand to survive chaos. You laugh and nod. You understand exactly what he means. And then there's love. You watch couples flirt in the forum. A brush of fingers. A hidden touch under a shared cloak. Always the right at first, but then you see one pair, 2 boys, pass a note between left hands. Deliberate, tender, like they're saying, this part of me isn't for public eyes. And it hits you, maybe the left hand isn't just for shame. Maybe it's also for secrets. The things you don't say aloud. You try it with someone once. A friend. You pass them a peeled fig with your left. No one sees. They smile. No words. But something unspoken settles between you like a spell. You begin noticing left-hand usage more consciously. You eat alone one night, using your left on purpose. Not rebellious. Just curious. The food tastes the same. But the act? It feels subversive. Intimate. Like you're reclaiming something. You remember that in some folk customs, offerings to the dead are made with the left, not because the dead are evil, but because they walk a different path now. And maybe your hand is just meeting them halfway. Even dreams start shifting. In one, you're seated at a long Roman feast. Golden dishes, flowing wine, music in the air. Everyone's using their right hand. But you're at the end of the table, using your left. No one notices, until the host stands, raises his cup, and mirrors you. The entire room slowly turns their bodies. They all begin eating left-handed. You wake with tears in your eyes. You don't know why. Maybe you've been waiting to belong in your own city. And maybe, just maybe, that dream was the closest thing to truth Rome ever gave you. You start walking differently after that. Not flaunting, but no longer hiding. Left hand on the railing. Left hand on the prayer stone. Left hand reaching for the curtain as you step into the street. Not wrong. Not cursed. Just quietly correct. In a city that wants every life to move rightward, you're moving gently against the grain. And somehow, you're still standing. The barracks smell like sweat and metal, and that special kind of despair that comes from weeks of marching in sandals through mud. You're a soldier now, or close enough. They've shaved your head, strapped a pack to your back, and shoved you into a cohort full of men who all seem to have been born holding their swords in their right hand like it was a bottle of warm wine. And you? Well, you're the exception. Not that anyone's thrilled about it. The Roman army is a machine. It thrives on uniformity. Shields in the left, swords in the right. Formations tight enough to crush a rat between two centurions' boots. There's no room for creativity. No space for flair. And certainly no love for someone who swings a blade with the wrong hand. Your centurion notices within the first hour of training. Left hand, he growls. Will beat that out of you. He tries. You fail. Repeatedly. Using your right hand in formation feels like riding with your feet while blindfolded. You trip. You twist. You nearly impale the guy next to you. Eventually, the centurion stops yelling and starts muttering. Something about omens. Something about cursed luck. One night, you hear him whisper to another officer. If he dies in battle, no one touches stuff. Might be hex. Charming. But here's the irony. When sparring breaks down into chaos, when the drills turn into real scrapes, your left hand wins. Again and again, you move wrong. But that wrong becomes unpredictability. You swing from strange angles. You block with the rhythm of a dream instead of a drill. You survive. And people notice. Quietly, of course. No one says it outright. But when real battle comes, out beyond a training yard, past the edge of Roman control, your comrades start sticking close. Not because they like you, but because left-handedness, it turns out, is hard to plan for, even harder to counter. There's a tale you hear around the campfire one night. A Roman unit ambushed in Germania, overrun. But one sinister soldier, that's how they say it, dramatically, held off 5 men alone, fought with his left, shield reversed, movement so off-kilter the enemy couldn't predict a thing. He lived. They didn't. Lucky freak, someone mutters. But then they glance at you. You just shrug. Luck is fine. Survival is better. You start developing techniques your instructors don't teach. Reverse stances, cross-body blocks, even a way to throw your pilum left-handed without snapping your wrist. At first, it's improvisation. Later, it's strategy. You're assigned a watch partner who's twitchy around your habits. You know, he says one night, polishing his dagger, some tribes think left-handers speak to demons. You raise an eyebrow. And yet, here I am, guarding your twitchy hide. He grins, eventually, but the suspicion never quite fades. That's the thing. The army is practical. If you're useful, they tolerate you. But they never trust you. You're an anomaly in a system built on standard issue everything. Still, you adapt. You learn how to fall into line without fully belonging to it. Then one day, during a border skirmish near the Danube, it all comes undone. You're in a tight ravine, arrows raining from above. The enemy charges from the cliffs like lightning wrapped in leather, and your formation, flawless on flat parade grounds, buckles. Someone drops their shield. A centurion screams. A legionnaire falls face first into the dirt. You don't think. You pivot. You switch your stance. Sword in your left, shield now slung low. Your body moves without permission. You duck, spin, stab. Your blade slips between ribs like it's dancing. The enemy expects right. You give them left. And they fall, one after another, blinking in confusion even as they die. When it's over, the survivors stare at you like you've grown a second head, or maybe wings. Later, the centurion claps a heavy hand on your shoulder. Still cursed, he mutters, but you fight like hell. Will keep you, praised by army standards. Word spreads. Quietly, you're given more leeway, a bit of grudging respect. Even a new dagger, etched with a crescent, someone's idea of a left-hand joke. You accept it. You find other left-handers. 2, not many. 1 from Thrace. Another from Numidia. They don't talk much, but when they nod at you, it's with recognition. The Silent Club. You meet a veteran who shows you a trick. How to reverse your shield grip to throw off an opponent's angle. Won me 3 bouts, he says, missing a few teeth. Lost me a thumb, 2, but still. You practice until your fingers bleed. One night, drunk on cheap wine and still shaking from a near miss with javelin, you find yourself staring at your hand. Your left hand by firelight. It's scarred now, calloused, not soft or shameful or strange. Just yours. You think of that little girl who got her hand slapped at breakfast. You think of the spell tablets, the counterclockwise spirals, the reverse dreams. You think of Caesar and Bologna and the gods who whisper sideways. And suddenly you realize something. Rome built its military on symmetry. Shields here, swords there. But you're asymmetry. You're the weak seam in the armor, the thing no one trains for, no one plans around. And sometimes, that's how you survive. You hear the roar before you see the arena. It's not the usual crowd hum or market murmur. This is something deeper, throatier, like a living thing, hungry and impatient. The Colosseum. You've never seen it this full. 40,000 people packed shoulder to shoulder, shouting for blood beneath a sky that doesn't seem big enough to contain it. The sun beats down on marble and muscle alike. Today is the final bout of the season. The biggest names. The biggest bets. And among the contenders, a left-handed gladiator. They call him Obex Sinistra, the leftward wall. He's not the favorite. That title belongs to a Thracian brute who once split a man's face in 2 with one swing. But Obex, he's the wild card. A secutor who fights reversed. Shield in the right, sword in the left. The opposite of every opponent he's ever faced. And that's exactly why he wins. You've seen it in training yards, in skirmishes on the edge of empire. Left-handers aren't just difficult, they're disorienting. In the arena, where everything is speed, instinct, and timing, facing a mirror image opponent is like trying to dance with your own shadow. One misstep, and your ribs become red confetti. Today, you watch Obex enter the arena with his head low, sword dragging just enough to leave a line in the sand. It's not theatrics, it's ritual. He stops at the center, lifts his left arm, and taps his shoulder twice. The crowd goes quiet for half a beat. Then, explosion. You feel it in your chest. You know that motion. You've done it yourself, somewhere between salute and spell. A gesture for those who walk the wrong path and come back with their bones intact. The gate across the arena creaks open. Out comes his opponent. Massive, glistening, overconfident. They circle. You lean forward, hands tight on the railing. And then it begins. Obex lead with his left. Every move inverted, every dodge unexpected. The crowd gasps when he spins right and stabs left, a perfect, unnatural curve of motion. The big man stumbles. It's like watching a statue try to outweed a shadow. Within minutes, it's over. Obex doesn't kill him, just cuts his thigh, knocks the helmet off, and raises his sword, not to the crowd, but to the gods. And with his left hand, the crowd erupts. Not all cheers. Some boos. Some confused mutters. But all loud. Historians still argue whether left-handed gladiators were truly common or simply celebrated as rare oddities. Records are murky. The Empire liked its mythologies tidy, its heroes symmetrical. But the graffiti, the unofficial carvings in taverns and alley walls, they tell a different story. You find one later that day. A crude drawing of a left hand, fingers spread, surrounded by coins. Below it, scratched in shaky Latin, Bet Sinistra, they never see it coming. Turns out, left-handed fighters skew betting odds. Their unpredictability makes gamblers nervous and hopeful. One wrong move from a right-handed champion, and the southpaw underdog wins everything. Some bookkeepers even track left-handers separately. One tells you off the record that Obex always throws off the pattern. Every time he fights, people bet against the odds. The man whispers, and he breaks them. He shows you a wax board full of fight data. There's a tiny star beside each left-handed fighter. Only a few, but they win more than they should. Obex isn't the only one. You dig up names. Nata, a Aridiarius who use a reverse net. Caught two opponents at once. Pulcher, a Hoplomachus who wore his crest backward and fought backward, literally moving in reverse circles, dragging enemies into his wake. And Varia, a female Venatrix, beast hunter, who supposedly killed a lion with a backward throw, with her left hand. Not all of them lived long, but none of them were forgotten. In the lower corridors of the Colosseum, you sneak past a rusted gate and find a wall of old chalk tallies, wins, losses, dates. Next to one name, you spot an odd symbol, a backwards S. Sinistra, the mark of a left-hander. Later, in the taverns, you listen to debates. Left-handed fighters should be banned. Why? They're just clever. They're dangerous. Unnatural. They're effective. Same thing, isn't it? One man leans in. You ever try to spar with one? It's like swinging at your own reflection. Nothing lines up. It's wrong. Wrong. Yes, but it works. You get to meet Obex once. Not long after his victory. He's drinking alone. You approach cautiously. You fight left, you say. He shrugs. I am left. Did they try to beat it out of you? He holds up his left hand, scarred and gnarled. Tried. Didn't stick. He doesn't say much else. But before you leave, he nods at your own left hand. You fight. Sometimes. Then keep that hand strong, he says. It knows things the rest of you doesn't. You remember those words. Over time, you notice how left-handedness in the arena starts bleeding into style. Even right-handers start mimicking the stance, faking it. A few are caught switching hands mid-fight to confuse opponents. The crowd loves it, but you can always tell who's faking. True left-handed fighters don't perform. They adapt. They survive. You watch more matches. Start keeping your own list. Watch the crowd. 2. You notice who flinches when a lefty wins, who gets excited, who mutters and looks away. And every time when the left-handed fighter raises her sword, win or lose, you raise your own hand, quietly, in salute, because in Rome, the arena is more than entertainment. It's the mirror of the city, and every now and then that mirror cracks, and a left hand reaches through. The mirror catches you by surprise. You're in a friend's villa, a place too clean and too quiet, with wine that tastes more like perfume than grapes. You duck into the balneum, their private bath, to wash the dust from your hands. That's when you see it. The mirror, a polished disc of bronze, hanging by a thread, reflecting the room in warped, watery light. You raise your left hand. In the mirror, it lifts to the right. It's such a simple thing, and yet it stops you cold, because the mirror lies. Or, depending on how you look at it, the mirror tells the truth. Romans love mirrors, not just for vanity, though there was plenty of that, hair, jewelry, makeup rituals that could rival modern red carpet prep. But mirrors were also seen as portals. Reflections were taken seriously, sometimes dangerously. You ask your friend about the mirror. She shudders slightly. My uncle covered all the mirrors in his house after my aunt died. Said her soul might try to return through one. That's a common belief, especially among the older families. You start hearing more. A street performer warns children not to gaze too long into still water. That's the first mirror, he says, and the cruelest. Someone always reaches through it. In some houses, mirrors are turned to face the wall during storms. You ask why. Lightning remembers, says an old woman. It follows reflections. You write that one down. And here's the thing. In Roman ritual, direction matters. Left, right, forward, back. It's all significant. But reflections flip everything. Mirrors confuse those rules. They create worlds where left is right and up is sideways and truth bends, which makes mirrors very suspicious. You hear about a priestess of Luna, goddess of moon, who only performed rites in rooms with no reflective surfaces. Said mirrors echoed the goddess's power, but also fractured it, made it unpredictable. Luna sees both ways, she was said to claim, but not all mirrors reflect her kindly. And then there are the twins. Romans didn't fear twins, not exactly, but they were considered omens, especially when they were mirror twins, one right-handed, the other left. Some said they shared a soul. Others said they had opposing destinies. One scroll tells the story of twin brothers, both centurions, who fought in opposite legions, one right-handed, the other left. Their shields bore identical wolves, mirrored. They died on the same day, in different provinces, without knowing. Historians still argue whether it's poetic nonsense or factual coincidence. But the image lingers. Two halves, inverted. A living mirror. You start noticing mirrors more often now. In the market, you see a woman selling them with charms tied to the handles, ribbons braided counterclockwise. Always, she tells you it's to keep the reflection honest. You buy one, not the prettiest, but it fits in your palm. When you hold it up, your left hand glows softly in the sun. It looks like someone else's hand. Familiar, but not yours. Like an echo. That night, you dream of writing on a wall, not in ink, but in reflection, each word curling backwards. You wake with a phrase still in your head. In left, the world begins again. You scratch it into wax. And then you try something new. You take a mirror. You sit in a quiet corner. And with your left hand, you write words backward onto a strip of parchment. Slowly, carefully. It feels wrong at first. But the longer you do it, the more natural it becomes. Your hand curves in perfect spirals, the ink flowing like water uphill. You hold the parchment up to the mirror. It reads perfectly. You smile. You're not the first. Old magical texts speak of mirror writing, not just as art, but invocation. Reversal was power, a way to bend the world. Some believe that by writing backward with the left hand, you could speak in a language of shadows, words meant not for humans, but for whatever watches from behind the glass. Of course, no one admits this out loud, but you find graffiti scratched behind a statue near the forum. Only those who face the wrong way can read the road ahead. You stare at it for a long time. Later, a temple attendant tells you that some initiation rituals involved walking backward through smoke while holding a polished disc. So your reflection entered first. To trick the spirits, she says, or let them go ahead and clear the way. You ask her which gods were invoked. She shrugs. Not the usual ones. There are even stranger tales. People who see things in mirrors that aren't there when they turn around. Not monsters. Not exactly. Just eyes, hands, figures moving the wrong way. You test it yourself. Late at night, mirror balance on your knees, a single candle flickering behind you. For a moment, you think you see someone else in your place, but it's only your reflection. Probably, you learn to write full sentences backward, faster now. It's become a meditation, a ritual, a conversation between you and something just beyond reach. And your left hand, it doesn't shake. It doesn't hesitate. It remembers. You think of all the times you were told not to use it, not to trust it. And now, here it is, guiding you through the backwards world with perfect grace. At a festival, you see a mirror maze set up by a traveling troupe. Children run through it laughing. Adults glance in and quickly away. You walk through it slowly, touching each surface with your left fingers. Halfway through, you stop. Every version of you is walking right. But you, You're going left. You laugh, quietly, because now you understand. The world doesn't fear the left because it's wrong. It fears the left because it sees. And sometimes it sees too well. The temples feel quieter now. Not just physically. Though yes, the crowds have thinned and the scent of incense doesn't bite your nose the way it used to. But spiritually, the very air hums differently. Like something big is shifting just beneath the marble. And you know why? There's a new faith creeping through Rome, whispered in dark corners and sung in candlelit basements. It doesn't worship Jupiter. It doesn't offer sacrifices to Mars or Bellona or Venus. It talks about one God, one Savior, one truth, Christianity. You're curious, of course. Everyone is. It's the gossip of the city. The way some Romans used to talk about foreign spices or distant rebellions, they now whisper about Christians. They eat in secret. They don't honor the emperor. They make the sign with their left hand. That last one snags your ear. You don't say anything, but you start watching. Carefully, you notice some people touching their chest or forehead in odd ways, quickly, like they're swatting flies or blessing themselves. Sometimes with the right hand. Sometimes not, so you follow the trail, down alleyways and into shops that stay open just a little too late. Past bread stalls that sell more than bread. Eventually, you meet a potter who wears a small fish symbol carved into the inside of his wrist. You ask him why. He doesn't answer. He just nods toward a basement door and says, "Go on the left staircase." Always the left. You do. What you find there surprises you. Not wild rituals. Not snake handlers or thunderous prophecies. Just people. Quiet. Listening. Holding hands. Sharing bread and wine. Not as Romans, but as something else. As believers. They talk about Jesus, a man who walked with fishermen and outcasts, who turned the world upside down, who healed with a touch, who, some say, favored the left hand, not out of rebellion, but because it reached the one sitting farthest from the table. And that's when it clicks. In the older faiths, the left was shadow, secret, magic. In this one, it's compassion, reversal, mercy, but it's still power. You hear stories of early martyrs, some crucified, others burned, but the ones who lived, they kept using signs. Quiet gestures, a fish drawn with the left hand in the dust, a whispered prayer while wrapping a wound with the left, as if that side still held meaning, still carried the weight of defiance. Of course, Rome didn't love that. Old traditions began to tremble, and in that panic, the stigma against the left hand only deepened. You overhear a priest railing against a rival. He blesses with the left, a hand already cursed by Mars. In some temples, left-handed offerings are banned outright, not discouraged, forbidden. The augurs tighten their rules. The haruspices, the entral readers, insist that leftward signs must be reported immediately. Some provinces even write new guidelines. Leftward omens are to be considered hostile. Hostile to whom? That depends on who's in power. Historians still argue whether Christianity adopted Rome's fear of the left or inherited it from older superstitions. But one thing is clear. As the empire bends toward this new faith, the left-hand path grows darker, less mystical, more dangerous. Some Christian sects warn their followers to avoid writing with the left. That's the hand the devil uses. One bishop declares from a pulpit, God's right hand holds salvation. The left hand, that opens the door to damnation. You feel like a slap. You're not even a Christian. Not yet. Maybe never. But the words cut just the same. Your hand, this quiet part of you that's always known more than it should, is now being cast as the limb of evil. You want to laugh. Or scream. Instead, you go for a walk. You pass statues that once seemed so proud, so eternal. They look different now, like they're waiting for someone to tell them what comes next. In one alley, you see a boy trying to teach his younger brother how to write. The little one grips the stylus with his left. The older boy sighs and switches it. Wrong hand. Wrong again. Always wrong. Later that evening, in a smoky papine near the baths, you hear two older men arguing theology. God forgives everything, one says. Even left-handedness, the other smirks. They both laugh, but you don't, because deep down you know the truth. Rome's fear of the left was never about morality. It was about control, about drawing lines, setting rules, creating clean systems. But the left hand breaks systems. Not violently, not with rebellion, just by being there, quiet, curious, refusing to mirror. And in this new religious world, that same need for order reemerges, cloaked in robe and hymns. Still, not everyone's forgotten. You meet a woman who claims her mother healed with her left hand, not as a sorceress. As a Christian, she says Christ's handprint, if it exists at all, would show both, left and right, because how else could he have reached both thieves on the cross? She smiles when she says it, and for the first time in weeks, something settles in your chest. Peace? Maybe. One day, you pass a child drawing spirals in the dirt, left-handed. His mother watches but doesn't stop him. He glances up at you and smiles. You nod, because maybe this world isn't ending. Maybe it's just shifting. And you, with your strange hand and backward dreams, aren't losing your place in it. You're walking ahead of it, left foot first. The road out of Rome isn't paved in gold. It's paved in dust, regrets, cart grooves, and sandals that never quite fit right. But you walk it anyway, your left hand trailing along crumbling walls and low stone fences, tracing your way out of the city you've grown up in, fought for, dreamed through, and now maybe are outgrowing. Because this journey, it's not really about Rome anymore. It's about you and your left hand. You pass places where your story once pulsed. The training yard where your shield clattered to floor. The darkened shrine where you first held out your palm and felt the air respond. The alley where you heard your name when no one was there. These places stay behind, like bookmarks in a story you're still rewriting. Every so often, you still hear whispers about the left-handed ones. Some say they vanished. Others say they went into hiding. One wild rumor claims they gathered under a mountain, built a city of mirrors and spiral stairs, and never looked back. You smile at that one, because maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they just started telling the story a different way. You feel it when you meet new people. Farmers, travelers, children with questions too big for their mouths. You notice who writes left, who eats left, who hesitates before switching hands, before bending to the world's rules. And when you see them, you offer no lecture, no sermons, just a gesture. 2 fingers lifted leftward, a curl of the hand, a subtle spiral. The signs passed down not in scrolls, but in skin and memory. There are others, of course, still afraid, still watching. Some will always call the left hand cursed, still mutter sinistra like it's a warning. Let them, because you know better. You've seen how the left hand holds not just weapons, but truths. The truths people don't want named. The kind that slip through cracks, that survive fire, that leave no inscription but last longer than stone. You remember the augurs and their birds, the leftward omens they half-trusted, half-feared. You remember Caesar's flickering reputation, the gods who demanded leftward spirals, the gladiators who broke patterns with a single backward swing. You remember being told to switch, to hide, to conform, and how you didn't. Not fully. You kept writing, dreaming, reaching, and now, the power hums more quietly, less like thunder, more like breath, less like rebellion, more like being. You sit on a hillside outside the city and watch the sun set over the Tiber. It curves leftward as it flows, just slightly, like even the river remembers. Your hand rests on your knee, open, not clenched, not casting spells or drawing signs, just existing. And that in itself feels magical, because maybe in the end, Rome didn't fear the left hand because it was evil. Maybe it feared the left hand because it couldn't be controlled, because it chose its own logic, its own rhythm, and because it reached for the sacred without asking permission. You close your eyes. A wind brushes your fingertips. Not warm, not cold, just there, like a whisper saying, yes, still here, still watching, still left. You rest now. The city's weight finally lifting off your shoulders. the hush of twilight settling deep in your chest. The road behind you isn't silent, not really. It echoes with old chants, the clatter of sandals, and 1,000 half-told stories. But the noise softens and the edges blur, and soon all that's left is you and the rhythm of your breath. Your left hand lies quietly now, its palm open like it's catching the last golden strands of day. It doesn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to teachers, not to gods, not even to Rome. The myths are quieter out here, less judgmental, more honest. You can finally hear the parts people try to forget. The little spells whispered by bread makers, the sideways prayers offered to fading stars, the fingers tracing counterclockwise over water, hoping for dreams that mean something. And maybe they did. You take one last look over your shoulder, back toward the city that tried to tell you which way to write, which hand to raise, which side was right. You smile, because you know now, the left hand isn't a mistake. It's a memory of everything crooked and beautiful and impossible to tame. Let that be your final thought tonight. Let your breath slow. Let your fingers loosen. And if you dream, let it spiral, not straight, but wide and soft, curling back toward the strange and sacred edge where all stories begin. Good night, traveler. Rest your left hand easy. It's earned it.